Welcome to Utility Mode, where performance meets real life. I'm Sophie Curtain, elite rugby league athlete, sports nutritionist, and student dietitian. Today, we're reviewing Game 1 of the 2026 Women's State of Origin series between New South Wales Sky Blues and the Queensland Maroons. We're breaking down the biggest moments from the game, the players who stepped up under pressure, where the game was won and lost, and what both teams need to improve heading into Game 2. From momentum swings and key matchups to player ratings and tactical decisions. This game gave us plenty to talk about. As we know, Origin isn't just about talent. It's about composure, execution, and handling pressure better than the team in front of you. So let's get into it. Intensity and physicality was there from the opening set. In terms of the overall game review, we saw massive momentum shifts throughout the entire game for both New South Wales and Queensland. And we know from previous years that Origin is always faster and more physical than your regular NRLW or NRL games. We saw New South Wales winning 11-6, coming back from 6-0 at halftime. So quite a tough game for New South Wales. But heading into the first half, what a start to the game. We saw a HIA with Keely Joseph, first tackle of the game, Category 1, off the kickoff. Absolutely crazy. Dominant tackle from New South Wales, but also slamming her head into the ground. Typical Category 1 symptoms. Stayed on the ground for long, looked confused and off balance. And then we see a quick change of momentum with Abby dropping the first kick from Queensland. Unfortunately, New South Wales showed a bit of poor resilience on our line, conceding a try in the first set, which is obviously disappointing. Thankfully, we were able to hold them out all the way until the second half, where we were next to score some points. Lauren Brown, great goal kicker, was able to convert the first try in the first set. Again, poor resilience from New South Wales on the back of a tough start for Abby Church. As I mentioned, dropping that first kick. From memory, it was a bomb, which she was able to kind of redeem herself later in the game with some of the takes. Following the first try, New South Wales was super lucky for the back-to-back penalties to get us out of our own end, because they had us pinned, as I said, pinned in the bottom corners, working our way out. And with the intensity and physicality of the Queensland team, we were very lucky to kind of have some relief there with the penalties given. Speaking of HIAs, we also saw Millie Boyle, 10 minutes into the game, suffer what looked like to be a Category 1 HIA, but she was not taken off or forced off by either the trainer or the independent doctors reviewing the game, which I thought was insane. Clearly very tough, but watching it back, again, I thought it was your typical Category 1 signs of concussion. And on social media, I saw there was quite a lot of backlash about it in terms of the consistency with ruling. You know, as I said, off the kickoff, we saw one of the Queensland middles go down or go off with the same thing and be ruled out for the remainder of the game. So I thought it was slightly unfair that Millie wasn't taken off. Obviously, as a New South Wales fan, I thought her inclusion in the remainder of the game was important, but in terms of long-term health and consistency throughout the game, I thought it was slightly unfair. And, you know, I'd wish she had had the proper review for her HIA, considering it was such an intense hit and what looked to be a Category 1. I guess going into Queensland now in their attack, we saw an emphasis on them contesting kicks. I've noticed that they have slightly taller outside backs compared to New South Wales. So we saw, I guess, quite a lot of kicks contested, and we saw from the outside backs in New South Wales. Due to their height, they often went defeated against the slightly taller outside backs of Queensland, and with, I guess, the half skill in their kicking game, they were able to get some really high balls off, which put New South Wales under a bit of pressure. But thankfully, we saw some really strong yardage carries from our outside backs that were able to, I guess, kind of save us in some of those key moments. There were a couple of strange things that I noticed in the first half from New South Wales. I know Kelly kind of likes to roam and play on both sides of the field, but I noticed in the first half she took a carry all the way onto the right wing, even though she was playing left centre. And obviously, she's captain. She likes to be involved. One of her biggest strengths is his running game, definitely. But yeah, I thought it was an odd observation to make, knowing that she took a carry and ended up on the right wing. In terms of the interchanges mentioning strange habits from New South Wales, I thought it was very, very, very odd to take Ellie Johnson off so early after only 13 minutes into the first half. I know there was obviously some back-to-back defensive efforts there and quite early giving up points, but 13 minutes for a prop. Again, I know it's Origin, I know it's a higher intensity and higher physicality, and taking into consideration that, majority of these players, if not all of these players, haven't played for 6 to 8 months. So I totally understand that, but ideally at that level, we want your props being able to last at least 20 minutes, particularly in the first half. So for the interchange to happen so early, obviously she would have been fatigued, but I didn't think it was that crazy. And then also noting Kennedy Charrington coming off with 2 to 3 minutes to go. Again, I know it was such a close game. We were down 6-0, but I thought her impact off the bench was pivotal into changing some of the momentum in the first half. And taking her off with 2 to 3 minutes to go before halftime, to me, seemed like another wasted interchange or a poorly timed interchange. If you can get your middle forwards through to halftime, they get a 15-minute break, and then they're able to kind of go again in that second half, and then you switch them out 15, 20 minutes into the second half. But yeah, taking her off with 2 to 3 minutes to go, I thought you could have just held her out a little bit longer. High energy, great defensive pressure, obviously attacking wise as well. Yeah, I don't understand, I guess, the thought behind that. Again, I understand they haven't been playing for so long that, it's hard in terms of getting that game fitness, and nothing really does it except for playing. And, there were no real opportunities for the New South Wales or Queensland teams to play other than, kind of rolling rucks or opportunities at training, which never meets the standard of, Origin level in terms of intensity, speed, skill, decision-making. So very, very strange interchanges for New South Wales. I know this one was in the second half, but I just want to bring it up while we're talking about it now. I'm not sure how I feel about having Tegan Berry on the bench. I feel like the swap that we made in the second half with her was a bit of a wasted interchange. I understand with previous years in terms of outside backs either getting injured or having to come off with HIAs, and things like that, and having her as kind of a backup on the bench. But I just thought it was a strange move to bring her on to move the outside backs around into the middle, which I thought they did they did very well considering. So we had, what was it? What's her name? I've just had a mind blank. Jamie Fassad. She went onto the middle and was an absolute tackling machine. So well done there, Jamie, for standing your ground as a winger in the middle. I'm not saying that I disagreed with that change, but I just thought, again, we could have utilised some of our middles a little bit better. And I understand it was probably a recovery, fitness point of thing as well. But yeah, I just don't know how I feel about putting Tegan Berry on when, yeah, we had our middles that could have used an additional rotation. Like, I don't think Kennedy came back on in the second half, or if she did, it wasn't for very long. Kezi was on the bench for a little while. As I said, Ellie Johnson came off with only 13 minutes into the first half. Yeah, I just thought that was a strange move, and we could have potentially rotated our middles a little bit better instead of using that interchange for an outside back when we already had a full team with all 5 outside backs. I guess, speaking with outside backs, I know I mentioned earlier Abby having a rough start to the game with a couple of drop balls leading to the try. I don't know if this was intentional or not, but it felt like she kind of went missing. I think because they were kicking to the wingers and just putting up those bombs, I feel like that kind of brought her out of the game, and just what she wasn't able to, I guess, kind of involve herself in some of the attack because there weren't too many line breaks and things like that. But, as always, very competitive, very determined, very fit. So she's able to kind of float around the ruck and take carries when she needs to. But I definitely thought that she was kind of overpowered by the other outside backs taking really strong carries. With Queensland's attack, I thought they were going to play a little bit more to their left side with I guess, the positional change of Tiana playing second row instead of in the centres. But I noticed early on they were kind of shifting more towards that right side, and they were loving playing down that right side. Even with the kicks, they were targeting both outside backs. But I definitely noticed Tamika took it down the short side on the right quite a few times. They were playing long shape to the right with both the halves linking up. They were putting bombs up to the right edge. And so, yeah, obviously they were looking to target at some weaknesses on New South Wales left edges defensively. But I thought it was a little bit strange to, I guess, kind of not play their attack towards Tiana with someone who's so comfortable in that centre position and having such little experience and time in second row in the position. And we obviously know that defending on the edge is quite hard, having to double D and read lines. And if you get caught, kind of in the sand or in the wrong position, you can easily get burnt on the outside. So I guess being one player in on the edge, I thought that potentially would have disrupted her defensive patterns a little bit. And I thought it was a little bit strange that they weren't able to, I guess, kind of capitalize on that change a little bit more. As I mentioned, they went into halftime 6-0. New South Wales, obviously no points scored, but they were able to kind of produce some pressure really early in the second half. Queensland showed some really, really, really good line defence. I guess, as I said, New South Wales weren't able to execute great, and that came on the back of a lot of errors. And that was from both teams. Don't get me wrong, Queensland made their fair share of errors as well. It looked like it was a little bit dewy in Newcastle that night. So I imagine the ball is a little bit slippery, but also in terms of our expectations of the game, what can you expect when they haven't played, as I said earlier, in 6 to 8 months? They've not played a proper trial game. They've only been able to do, I guess, opposition training skills and drills. And yeah, it looked a little bit sloppy from, I guess, kind of the standards that we've seen previously. But again, I understand why. But yeah, it's just frustrating knowing that the game is such a better quality than what was kind of shown. And, this is not a dig at anyone in the teams. Like, I know and have played with and against a lot of those players, and, they're all great quality players. And I know that they have much better standards for themselves and probably for the game as well. But it's just hard to watch, and it's frustrating to watch knowing that the standard of game that they can play with a full preseason under their belt and I guess kind of more game experience behind them. But yeah, the errors and what seemed to be a lot of just simple ball handling errors was tough to watch. I noticed that it didn't seem like we shifted the ball too well. I know we put Queensland, I guess, kind of under the pump early in that second half with them defending their line, but it just seemed a little bit clunky. And again, that kind of goes back to the lack of training and the lack of opportunity to play. I don't know where else the NRL can put the Women's State of Origin game, because I don't think you can put it in the season, because it takes, I guess, the best players away from the game for too long, considering it's such a short season. So I don't think that's possible. I don't know that you can put it at end of the year because of injuries and things like that, but also in terms of availability for international games and World Cups. And then at the beginning of the year, we're having the problem that we have now with, players not being up to par in terms of skill and fitness and readiness compared to the standard of NRLW after a full preseason with their teams and with consistent, edges and positional plays and things like that. Obviously, they're all training together for weeks prior to camp, but there's only so much that you can do, training once a week and then going into camp for, a week or 10 days beforehand. So hopefully in game 2, we see a reduction in some errors and we see a little bit more cohesion with New South Wales ball playing. Bringing back to Tiana, I thought she was much more involved in the attack in the second half. I thought, again, it wasn't necessarily her fault that she wasn't super involved in the attack. Sometimes it's hard to get yourself in the game if the ball's constantly going the other way, or if you're constantly just coming out of yardage. Middle's making quite a lot of tackles, and she looked quite fatigued there late in the first half, having to make more tackles than normal. So, I thought they did well to kind of utilize her a little bit better in the second half with regards to her attack. It was definitely noticeable in the first half. I don't think she had too many carries or too much opportunity to have any, I guess, kind of good lines to be able to run in good ball. As I said, it was a bit clunky. And again, they seem to go more towards that left with Jessie Southwell being the main controller of the game at half. I guess looking at New South Wales defense, I mentioned in the first half, it was quite poor. They didn't have very good resilience with Queensland scoring so early in the first half, but Queensland went very, very close to scoring again in the second half with the short ball from the hooker after the scoot. I thought we did very, very well to save that from being a try. We saw a couple of missed field goals as well, and now we can say that Jessie is now one of 2 players to ever kick a field goal in the women's origin. So Lauren Brown was the only one prior to this game, and we saw 2 missed field goal attempts from her. But now we can see that Jessie is joining the club for halves in the women's game that have kicked field goals in State of Origin. I did think it was a rough call for their challenge with the ball plant. Yeah, I guess the inconsistencies with the refereeing and some of the decisions regarding ruck infringements and obstructions and escorts, and yeah, it's not just in Origin; it's in NRL and NRLW as well. So, I guess, I mean, it was unlucky in terms for the challenge, but I can also see why it went the other way. But yeah, I just want to see a little bit more consistency in terms of captain's challenges and on-field decisions from our referees, and then even reviewing tries. Like, it seems to be, for me, either very blatantly obvious it was a try or a no try, and they take 10 years to review the play. But then with the captain's challenge, it seems to be quite quick, and I understand obviously they're mid-set sometimes, and they have to, make decisions quickly, but I just thought that was a bit of a rough call for that ball plant captain's challenge. Going back to New South Wales defense, we had a great try saver from both Millie and Abby, and were able to turn it into a repeat set after running 100 meters from their own line. So Queensland kind of had momentum for majority of the first half, and some slight changes in momentum for New South Wales, but they just weren't able to capitalise on anything. But to be able to go from being under the pump on your own line after giving away, a few penalties, then marching up your field, and then saving the try and turning it around and running basically 100 meters and turning that into a repeat set. That's great resilience there from New South Wales, and I wish we were able to see a little bit more of that in the first half. And we saw, obviously, Ellie Johnson going over for a nice try in the second half, followed by surges to score in the final seconds on the last tackle of the game after, I guess, some persistent attacking pressure from New South Wales. We saw 20,179 people attending the game in person, and I don't know the specific stats off the top of my head, but I saw that 9 News had the greatest viewership of a game so far this year. So it's great to hear that the game is growing. Again, despite it not being the best quality game, from what I saw on social media, there was quite a lot of support for them and understanding that it is before the season's even started. The rest of the competition has only just started pre-season. They haven't played any games in months. A lot of them have been coming back from injuries, and, Millie Boyle coming back from pregnancy. Millie Elliott coming back from pregnancy. It's great to see that the support and the attendance and the growth and the viewership and the media coverage is all growing with the quality and standard of the game. Ellie Johnson, was at 45 minutes. So we had Jess Soders again scoring at the very end. We had Otessa scoring in the second minute. So the first set on their line, they scored. Crazy. So final score was 11-6, as I mentioned. Jessie Southwell was able to nail the field goal and was at 50% conversion rate. So she missed one of the kicks from Jess Soders' try, but she was able to convert Ellie Johnson's try. And we had the field goal at the 62nd minute. Looking at kind of the team stats, we saw a pretty even possession rate. It was 53% for New South Wales and 47% for Queensland. Again, I thought Queensland kind of dominated the first half, but New South Wales were able to grind through and just be persistent and build some pressure. And as a result, typically whoever has the ball more is able to score more points and usually win the game. And that seems to be what happened. And despite the high rate of errors, again, New South Wales were coming out on top, completing 29 out of 35 sets with 82%. Queensland falling a little bit short, especially in that second half with fatigue kind of in the game. 21 out of 30 sets and 70% completion rate. We saw New South Wales leading in pretty much all of the major attacking stats. We had 178 runs compared to 137 for Queensland. There was 1,647 metres run for New South Wales compared to 1,279 for Queensland. Post-contact metres was more than 100 higher for New South Wales and Queensland with 585 metres compared to 451 metres. We had 3 line breaks for New South Wales compared to the 2 for Queensland. 34 tackle breaks for New South Wales compared to 25 for Queensland. The average set distance was slightly longer for New South Wales with 47.08 metres and Queensland 42.63 metres. And the kick return metres I spoke about earlier, our outside backs having a really strong an impact in our game with those strong yardage carries with 135 kick return metres compared to 70 from Queensland. And the average play the ball speed for New South Wales was 3.72 seconds and 4.07 seconds for Queensland. So we can see that New South Wales were able to slow the ruck down and had better ruck control than Queensland did, with New South Wales fighting for those quick play the balls. We also saw 8 offloads compared to 3 offloads for Queensland. So that probably gives us, some more opportunity to get some quick play the balls and second phase play to get them on the back foot. There was 223 total passes compared to 165 for Queensland, 23 dummy passes and 11 for Queensland. The kicks was equal, so there was 18 kicks each, and unsurprisingly, Queensland had 534 kick meters compared to New South Wales 455. So with that is the only stat that they were able to win in terms of attack. So New South Wales also forced 2 dropouts compared to Queensland 0. We had 6 bombs each and 2 grubbers from New South Wales. In terms of defense, I spoke about New South Wales having a quicker play the ball compared to Queensland, and this is reflective in the defensive stats. So we have 90.54% efficient tackles made by New South Wales, and we have 86.59 for Queensland, which are both, again, quite high. And at that level, obviously, that's kind of a priority for each team in defense. We have 287 tackles made for New South Wales and 297 tackles made for Queensland, so roughly a similar amount. Despite, obviously, the slight changes in possession, we see that New South Wales missed only 25 tackles compared to Queensland's 34. We also see 12 ineffective tackles compared to New South Wales 5, and that, again, probably plays, I guess, in the part in their faster play the ball on average. In terms of penalties conceded, we saw New South Wales with only 3 compared to Queensland's 7, which is quite a drastic change. And in terms of errors, both very high from each team. And we can see that 9 errors for New South Wales compared to Queensland errors of 11 definitely made a difference in, I think, the outcome of the game. The additional fatigue, additional tackles, additional missed tackles, and ineffective tackles is kind of reflected in the error count as well. Looking at some of the individual stats, I think there were some standouts for some of the players. Going into Yasmin Meeks, player of the match, 35 tackles was the most for the game, with Jada Ferguson coming in second with 34 tackles. Yasmin Meeks, as I said, awarded player of the game. I was a little bit surprised. I saw a lot of controversy online thinking that players like Jess Surges should have received the player of the match. I'm not sure how I feel about Yasmin Meeks receiving. I definitely think she played well, played consistently. She didn't do anything that kind of caught my eye, which isn't always a bad thing. I mean, she did a role, didn't do anything silly, had some strong carries, and obviously was quite involved on that left edge in defense. As I said, Queensland were kind of tacking that right side quite consistently, so it doesn't surprise me that she has the most tackles. Speaking of unsurprising results, we have Isabel Kelly with the most run meters in the game with 214 compared to Queensland's 198 meters with Julia Robinson. Again, pretty typical for both of those outside backs being quite strong ball carriers and finishers. We have Jamie Chapman with one line break and Tamika Upton again with one line break, both amazing outside backs. And fantasy points, most points go to Jessica Surges with 57 fantasy points and Otessa Pule with 50 because of her try so early on in the game. Looking at, I guess, the points scored, we've already gone through that. It was Jess Surges with a try, Jessie Southwell with one conversion and one field goal being 3 points, and Ellie Johnson with 4 points with her try at prop. I do think New South Wales showed some advantages through their settled squad and obviously the key players that have been playing in basically every Origin game. I saw a cool stat from, I believe it was New South Wales Rugby League, that Isabel Kelly and Kezzy Apps were the only two players to have played in every single Origin game since its, I guess, creation as official Origin game on TV for the women in the NRLW, which I thought was a really cool statistic. It definitely shows in their, I guess, involvement in the game and their leadership throughout the team, and the stability with the team being so consistent over the last few years definitely shows in the combinations, despite it still being a little bit clunky at times. I definitely think that the new look and the new spine for Queensland was still building chemistry, and they just kind of missed that experience and missed that cohesion in some of those key moments. Now, looking at some player ratings individually from Nine News, I definitely disagreed with some of these ratings, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. There's posts on social media, or feel free to comment on YouTube what your thoughts were on player of the match and as well the player rankings. So I'm just going to read them out here. So we've got Abby Church with a 5. Look, I thought that was pretty reasonable. Again, didn't have the most amazing game, but, obviously still quite high effort areas. Jamie Chapman, 7. Jess Surges, 7.5. Look, I think they played well as well. Jess Surges did have some handling errors as well, but obviously pulled, quite a good try out towards the end. Isabel Kelly with an 8. High run meters. I thought she played well. Jamie Frassard, a 7. I thought she had some good carries and did well defensively in the middle. I thought maybe that was a little bit high. Jocelyn Kelleher was a 6. I thought she played well, didn't do anything crazy. I definitely thought that Jessie Southwell had definitely more involvement and control in the attack, which makes sense as a 7. And she was given a 6.5. I think that's about appropriate. Missed what seems like an easy conversion. Didn't have some amazing kicks on the back end. Keely Nizza, formerly Keely Davis, congrats on getting married in the off-season. Apologies in the first episode if I referred to you, and this goes to Millie Elliott as well as your maiden names. Keely was given a 5, which I thought was a bit rough. I know she didn't have too much involvement in some of the key plays in attack and had some poor passes from hooker, but played some big minutes, and obviously defensive efforts there were high. Millie Elliott, 6.5. Again, reasonable, especially considering the HIA so early on in the game and being able to stay on the field. Tiana Penatani, 7. Again, I don't think she did anything wrong. I thought she wasn't really involved in the first half, but managed to get much more involved in the second half. Yasmin Meeks, again, 7.5. Played really well. Most tackles and player of the match. Olivia Koenig, always a great player, 7.5. Thought that was pretty reasonable. Olivia Higgins, 6.5. I thought she played well, but I also think comparing Keely Davis's score of 5 was interesting, considering I think Keely played more minutes. Kennedy Charrington, a 6. I thought she had a great impact off the bench, same as Kezzy Apps. I thought Kezzy actually had a really, really good game coming off the bench, and I'm hoping that she gets some more game time in the second game, particularly with her impact and her carries through the middle. So I definitely think Kennedy and Kezi were a little bit hard done by, and I would have probably given them a little bit of a higher rating. And Teganberry 5, I think that's a bit high, personally. Again, strange interchange for me. There was an error early on, not too many carries from her, and strong, I guess, run meters or post-contact meters. Didn't score any points. I don't remember her making any crazy defensive decisions or really good tackles. So personally, I think that's pretty high when you look at Abby, who played the whole game. I know she made errors, but obviously getting a 5 as well seems a bit strange to also give that to Teganberry, in my opinion. So for most of them, I'd kind of agree, but I definitely think that Keely was hard done by, and I think Kennedy and Kezi were quite hard done by. And I think there were a few players who probably were a little bit overestimated, but again, that's just my personal opinion. So looking at, I guess, kind of going into game 2, we have New South Wales with the opportunity to close out the series with a 1-0 game win heading into Suncorp. We all know it's hard to win in Origin, let alone hard to win in the opposing state's territory. So Suncorp in Queensland. It's going to be an opportunity for Queensland to get some redemption in their home soil, but they need to just improve on execution and their discipline with their errors and penalties. And we look at building those combinations with their new spine and their younger players. We see a few changes to both squads. We have Tiana Penatani Gray ruled out with a knee injury, which puts Kezi into starting second row and bringing Rima Butler onto the bench to join, which I think is a great addition. Another really powerful, really strong middle. And again, hopefully can have a better rotation of the middles in this game. And we have Jasmine Peters out. Sorry, Jasmine Peters is in. And Phoenix Rain Hippie is out with a hamstring injury. So we do have some changes, but mostly the same for both squads. We know that Origin isn't won by talent alone. It's won by composure, control, and handling pressure that's better than the team in front of you. Who do you think is going to be able to do that? And what are your predictions for Game 2? Let me know in the comments below. Thursday, May 14th at Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane, New South Wales versus Queensland, Origin 2, 2026. Thank you for listening. This is Sophie Curtain, and you're listening to episode 7 of Utility Mode.